socially. This is a time where we want to be more social, more sociable, more outgoing, and make those bonds that can last across the rest of the year. This is that month for me where Muslims from all walks of life, whether you're rich or poor, whether you're religious or irreligious, practicing, non-practicing, old or young, we come together as equals at iftar time, at sehri time, at the prayer time. And I think it's a great example. It's something to be proud about. It's something to shout about. It's something to share. You know, we're talking about best practice. I mean, we are living in a time where I don't need to tell you that, you know, to be a Muslim is pretty difficult. To say proudly that you're a British Muslim and you're a proud, practicing, believing British Muslim is kind of hard. At best, you're ridiculed by some of the people in power and influence. At worst, you're demonized. And I think this is the time when we, you know, at the end of the day, some of us say, and I have this conversation with my wife will say, why is it you go out and you say things on Twitter or you write articles saying, condemning this person or that person, disowning this person or that person? We shouldn't have to condemn anyone. We shouldn't have to disown anyone. It's something to do with us, which is a legitimate school of thought. On the other hand, we live in a real world where we are judged by the actions of a tiny minority. We are judged by the actions of fringe extremists who bring our religion and our community into disrepute. And therefore, it is partly an obligation on us to do what we can to counter those stereotypes, to show people that we're not just those guys who are all about getting angry and frustrated about bad things happening in the world, but we're also here to do positive things, happy things, uplifting things, sociable things, normal things, with Muslims and non-Muslims alike. And that's why I think this event is amazing. What's so important, however, of course, and this applies to all of us as a whole, is that what do you do after Ramadan is over? Because, of course, can you keep the community spirit and that spirit of bonding and outreach that you feel in these 30 days, can you continue that across the rest of the year? I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. Perhaps not. Perhaps that's why Ramadan is so unique, so special to so many of us. But it's something we certainly have to try and do. And I think for those of you who are volunteering on initiatives like this, the big question is, what do you do once Eid is over? Because of course the challenges of poverty and homelessness don't disappear on Eid. The challenges of Islamophobia and demonization don't disappear on Eid. The questions that constantly are asked of us as to whether we're integrated, whether we're proud Brits, whether we are moderate Muslims, those questions don't go away on Eid. So I think those of you who are having this struggle and working hard to pull off events like this, the best thing now to do as we approach kind of, you know, the home straight, as we wait for Muslims to get together and decide what day is Eid, we need to really, and you really need to think about what you're going to do next. What I would say as a word of encouragement is that they say that as Muslims we're supposed to be ambassadors for our faith. And I think if that is the case, then I think those of you who are here, who have been here in these days, volunteering, working hard, reaching out, doing your best to help some of the poorest, neediest people in your society, regardless of race, creed, color, gender, sexuality, whatever. I think, from my perspective, you very much are the best ambassadors that we have, and that's why I'm glad to come here and congratulate you all. Thank you very much for your time.
A lot of people will be aware about the Oxford debate, and that video went viral. Did you realise at the time the kind of impact that video would have?
No, the question was about a debate that I did at the Oxford Union recently, where the video did go viral, weirdly viral, in so many weird ways. No, I mean, that debate took place the day after the Woolwich killing, and there was discussions at Oxford as to whether that debate should be cancelled. Some of us resisted and said, if you cancel it, you're vindicating the argument, you're almost conceding the argument without even having it, because by cancelling it, you're implying there is some link between Islam and terrorism and violence. The motion was, this House believes Islam is a religion of peace, not a great motion, a slightly tortuous statement. But we went along and we did the debate the day after Woolwich. I thought we'd probably lose because emotions were pretty high and still are high. I think Woolwich, I mean, as a separate discussion, I think Woolwich has been a turning point for many other reasons. But weirdly, we won. Thankfully, we won. People saw sense. Depressingly, 168 people still voted for the motion that Islam is not a religion of peace. Some of the most educated people in the country, a bunch of Oxford students, which was depressing, but we did win by a 100-vote margin, and then they didn't put the video up for ages, and then they suddenly bunged it up, and I think it went a bit crazy. I think partly it went crazy, I can't take all the credit, I think partly because I think the month of Ramadan helped. I think a lot of Muslims coming together, especially in foreign countries and the Gulf and places, I think people were just forwarding it to each other, and I was getting kind of crazy emails from all over the place. But I didn't see that coming, but you know, it got people talking, definitely, and it's funny because lots of people have now issued long rebuttals to it, which is fine, but that's the nature of debate. Let's have the argument again and again. I'm happy to have that argument. It frustrates me that, of course, that my religion is always connected to and linked to violence and terror, both by Muslims and by non-Muslims. But on the other hand, of course, as I say, every cloud has a silver lining. If it gives me the opportunity to go forward and use the negative debate about Islam to say some positive things and to open up some eyes and win a debate in the process and have, 810,000 people or whatever watch it, then great. But no, I didn't see.
Do you get the sort of accusations? Because I get this, ridicule, not thinking in a scientific manner. Do you get that a lot? Do you get it from Richard Dawkins? Do you get it elsewhere?
If you didn't hear, the question was about, do you get, as a kind of practicing, believing Muslim who's out in the public eye, do you get a lot of ridicule and questioning about kind of rationality and having mad beliefs? And Richard Dawkins is a classic example of that. What a day to talk about that. I spent most of today having a row with him about these things, which is a whole separate long debate. Although when I interviewed Richard Dawkins for Al Jazeera, he put me on the spot about night journey and all of that stuff, and it became a big laughing point on the kind of anti-me side, which is, oh, you believe in all these mad miracles, which is fine. I believe in miracles. If I'm mad, that's fine. So do a lot of people. But I think, yes, we live you've got to be careful, because as someone who's lost in a media bubble, and it's interesting because you guys are in university and it's been 13 years since I was at university, you forget what it's like. You can get lost in bubble environments. A university is a bubble, Twitter is a bubble, the Westminster Village is a bubble, the British media is a bubble, and you can get lost and assume that whatever bubble you're in represents wider society, and it tends not to. And I think sometimes when I get the kind of crazy, the really, really militant, kind of anti-Islam, anti-Muslim, kind of French-style atheist secularists who think it's all mad, all crazy, the only moderate Muslim is a Muslim who doesn't believe. Because there are some people, the definition of moderate Islam is someone who doesn't actually believe in Islam. When you're confronted with those people, you just have to remind yourself that is not the British public at large. Not even the European public at large, although some sections of places like France. And you have to remind yourself that is part of elite opinion. And yes, you're going to have that debate. If some of you here are planning to have jobs in the media, that's something you're going to have to accept. There are not many, not just Muslims, there are not many practicing Christians in the media. There are not many practicing Jews in the media. There are not many religious people in the media. So that is something, when I'm a lefty, but when right-wingers, when the Daily Telegraph and the Daily Mail attacks the media's liberal bias, with regard to religion, they're probably right. Because it is very liberal, it's not very conservative in a religious sense. So yes, you're constantly battling that. But you have to remind yourself that it's an aberration. And when even Britain, even good old wonderful Britain, which is so secular, that's fine. But it's an aberration globally, as the